What is good, everyone? Welcome to the channel. My name is Paul. I make videos about Japanese society, life, and culture from the viewpoint of a long-term foreign resident. And today's topic is gaijin bubbles, or foreigner bubbles. Basically the situations you can find yourself in Japan where you've enveloped yourself in a way that you're cutting out outside information, new ways of thinking about things, etc. So today I'm going to be talking about 6 of these, and that sounds like a lot, but actually the first 3 are pretty well known or pretty recognizable to begin with, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about them. And the latter 3 are going to be things that I'll get into with a little more depth. Now, there's one thing I want to get out of the way, which is I'm not talking about these in any sort of judgmental way, because, to be perfectly honest, I've basically been in these bubbles myself. So, I mean, I'm guilty of them. I think if you live in Japan, you'll think, yes, I'm guilty of some of these. If you're thinking about living in Japan or a foreign country in general, this is something to watch out for, I guess. And I think it's going to be kind of universally understood that this is what can happen to people in their normal human condition in society. And without further ado, let's get into the first 3. And the first one is the expat bubble. You are a member of an international corporation that has been sent to Japan, or you are in the military and you are stationed on a US base in Japan. And for people in that situation, I think it's largely like Japan is a backdrop to your life and where you are, but you're not really immersed in a way because you're working in an environment that is in English, and you're maybe living on base, or you're living in housing provided for expats, and you're sending your kids to international schools. And you would be pretty much in the same situation if you'd been put in Singapore or Hong Kong or another country, not just Japan. And while of course you're going to be able to go out to restaurants and shop and that sort of thing, it's not the same level of getting into the country as you would be if you lived here for a long time or were working for a Japanese company or something like that. A bubble similar to that, which is one I can relate to, is the JET bubble, or the Japan Exchange Teaching Program bubble. People who come over on this exchange program, generally known as JETs. I was a JET, and JETs tend to end up hanging out with other JETs. You come over to Japan and you're in the same situation, you befriend people at the conference and orientations, etc., and you end up hanging out with the JET crowd. And if you have Japanese friends, they're probably mutual friends of other JETs, and then you find out that these Japanese friends have been friends with the JET before you went to that school, so the person who is your predecessor was friends with these people, and it's like kind of a revolving door. These Japanese are often friends with whatever the new JETs are that have arrived, and there's nothing wrong with this. And obviously JETs are a little bit more embedded in Japanese culture just by virtue of working in a Japanese school with Japanese co-workers teaching Japanese kids. But yeah, you can get kind of trapped in this social bubble of always hanging out with other JETs. Yeah, the JET bubble's a thing. The third bubble I'll just mention briefly is the English bubble. And this one also seems pretty obvious, although Japan in particular is a country that you can get away with not learning very much Japanese. And there's several reasons for this, one of which is the Japanese people are incredibly patient. They're not going to get on your case about not learning Japanese. And Japan is a very harmonious, non-confrontational society. People don't want conflict, and so you won't get the attitude of, hey, you're in Japan, speak Japanese, or your Japanese really isn't good, you should study more. Like, people aren't going to make those negative or aggressive comments like you might get in the States. I think those of us who've lived here a long time, we all know someone who, I know people who have been here as long as I have who can order from a menu with pictures on it and not much else in Japanese. So I highly recommend against this, just simply because take a moment and think about how much you are missing when you don't understand Japanese. Like, just walking around the street, how many things do you pass by that you have no idea what it is because you can't read anything? Or just casual conversations that happen around you and you just have no idea what is it that Japanese talk about when they're sitting around in the cafe. You just have no real plug into the zeitgeist or the what's happening with people in their lives, you know, from talking with them in Japanese or just hearing Japanese in the ambiance, right? So it's not the best way. You're not going to learn a lot about Japan. You're going to be very surface level of things in almost every way. But let's get into the final three. And these three, I'm sure if you've lived in Japan, you're going to recognize all of these. And the first one, I think 99% of us are going to relate to this. And I would say it's not even just for people who live in Japan, but for people who have moved to any foreign country. You're going to exist in a bubble where you have lost contact with what is going on, what is really happening in society in your home country. You're just going to lose touch with what's going on where you came from, and there's not much you can do about that. And this lesson I learn again and again every time I go back to visit, because I'll go back and realize that, oh, what I thought was happening or how I thought things were isn't actually the case. And I actually believe that consuming news media makes it worse, because the media makes these narratives about what people seem to be caring about, and then I get back to the States and no one I know is talking about it, and like, oh, no one really cares, or that's kind of old news or whatever. The media narratives don't often match up with what I actually experience once I'm there. So that is certainly a difference. And it, of course, applies to popular culture as well. Even if you're trying to stay up on things through social media, you know, what your friends post, and you follow things on Instagram. I mean, I always feel disconnected from what are the latest things. It doesn't matter if you have a account with Netflix and you watch movies and you watch the news and you follow certain accounts on Instagram. You're genuinely missing what is really on people's minds and what people are talking about and what the zeitgeist is when you're abroad. And there's really not much you can do about that. What is a bubble? A bubble is lacking information. You living within this dome where streams of information are not reaching you. That's what it is to live in a bubble. So that one's hard to avoid, and I think everyone can relate to that one. The next bubble is what I refer to as the My Japan bubble. You see, those of us who've lived in Japan for more than a couple of years have had a lot of unique experiences, a lot of special things happen. We've reached an understanding about the culture and the society. We have Japanese acquaintances and friends, maybe spouses, families, and we feel like we have developed this really good understanding about Japan and our place here. It can sometimes evolve into a kind of competitiveness or a belief that, like, I have arrived and I've got this place figured out and I know Japan, and sometimes it's based on like how long you've been here. Some people turn that into a pissing contest. Well, I've been here for 20 years, or I've been here for 10 years. Oh, you've only been here for 5 years. You see, the trap is, while you have undoubtedly had a unique and special experience in Japan, the truth is, so has everyone else. My Japan is ultimately kind of a competition bubble that you fall into. And underlying that is this belief that you have a deeper or more complete understanding than other people just because you've done this, just because you've experienced these things that others have not, just because you've been here for longer than anyone else, or just because you have studied and read more than others. So instead of keeping that spirit of gaining knowledge and trying to gain information from other expats, other foreigners living in Japan, it becomes this bubble of I know what I know, and I have a kind of a superiority in that sense. And again, I say that these are bubbles I've fallen into. I've certainly been in the My Japan bubble myself. I hope I never come across as explainy in these videos. I try to make it always about just my own observations. And I always say that one of my favorite things about this channel is the comments section, because I have a lot of people who have a lot of knowledge about Japan or are more knowledgeable about certain things than I am, who come down to my comments and say, well, have you thought of it this way? Or I think it's more like this. And I'm greatly appreciative of those comments. It's one of the reasons I do this, because I still have this craving, this want for more information. These videos are often me kind of working my thoughts out about Japan, and it's not always something that has all of the information that it could be informed by. And so getting these different perspectives, different ideas shared in the comments are incredibly useful for me, and I'm really happy for that. Very often the only reply I can make is, thank you so very much for your comment, like I didn't think of it that way, or like, oh, I'm gonna have to read more about that, or oh, that's really interesting, thank you for this. And I really mean those comments when I reply. So yes, please join in the conversation below. That's how we're all learning. And if you've never really checked out the comments, you've only watched my videos, I invite you, because there's really knowledgeable people who show up and say, hey, did you ever think of it this way? And there have been some very interesting back and forth discussions that happen. So yeah, check out the comments if you never have. But in the end, that's part of my way of trying to be sure I'm not in this my Japan bubble. Like, I have reached the be all and end all of knowledge about Japan, and like I have the most unique experience and knowledge about this place, because I most certainly do not. Okay, the final bubble is what I think is the most insidious bubble, the easiest one to slide into and become a victim to, and that is the safety blanket bubble. It's just too easy to fall into a routine, find the places that you're comfortable, you have plenty of experience with, and always continually just do the same thing over and over because it's safe, because it's known, and because it's familiar. So I'm sure you can hear that sound. That is a tofu truck that's going around the neighborhood. I'm just gonna walk past it and start talking again because it's a little loud. But yeah, that flute sound is supposed to sound like tofu. Yeah, tofu delivery truck. I think for a lot of people who have chosen to live in Japan, especially for the long term, part of the motivation is the adventure of it, the feeling that you have somehow taken yourself out of the mundane everyday life of where you came from, where everything is easy, and you've become kind of the main character in an adventure story of living abroad, because just doing even simple things is about dealing with a different cultural mindset, a different societal way of doing something, a language barrier that you have to overcome. So you become this main character, and you're no longer maybe an NPC or non-player character in your life. And that is not to throw shade at anyone who doesn't live abroad. That's not what I'm getting at. But I do feel that there is this feeling amongst foreigners living abroad that you are living a little bit more of an adventure than if you'd stayed in your home country. But you then fall into this trap of the routine here. You go to work, you just do your daily things, you always go to the same shops and restaurants, you rarely try new things anymore, you kind of stay in the same place for safety and comfort. And that's just a very human, instinctual thing to do. It's not surprising, and I've absolutely fallen into this bubble myself more than once, and then I kind of break out of it and then realize, oh, I've gotten back into my routines again, and I got to break out. So it's just a really common thing, and it's good to be mindful of it. And it's not even necessarily bad to be in that bubble, but for me, I just want to kind of keep that adventure continuing. And there's all kinds of ways you can do that. Like, obviously, there are people who never seem to lose that, like Donnie Kimball, who does The Other Side of Japan blog, and authors like Alex Kerr always seem to be doing something where they're having an adventure, going somewhere, or they're learning something new, or they're seeing something that they learned about and now they've got that connection. But you know, most of us have lives and families and jobs and that don't allow us to do that all the time. But I think it's important to escape the mundane from time to time, to get out and away from just the ordinary. So I actually do add little things in my life as much as possible, like trying new places to eat as often as possible. And if I go back to places where I've eaten before, I deliberately order something I've never had before or something new on the menu. I almost always get the special because I've never had it and it's not going to be around again. I actually do the thing where I get on the train and I go to a random station and get off and walk around just to see what's there. Sometimes it's because I'm looking for a spot to film a video like this, and other times it's because I just want to explore. And while it's difficult to recapture that feeling of adventure that you have when you first move to Japan, doing those little things helps you to recapture a piece of that. It's also about taking the chance and striking up conversations with people you don't know, because it's not just the places you go and the shopping that you do, it's also who you interact with. So getting out of your shell with the people you interact with is also a good thing to do. In a social setting, I still try to step out and talk to people I've never met before. And even just exploring neighborhoods where you've spent plenty of time before, like this neighborhood in Kanazawa-ku or Kanazawa Ward in Yokohama. There's so many streets and alleyways here, random shrines and temples that I haven't explored the grounds of, little restaurants and shops that I haven't run across before. It's a warren of streets here, and it's one of my favorite to kind of wander around because I always feel on the edge of getting lost. But at the end of the day, what I'm getting at is, you know, if you want to recapture that sense of adventure, you're just going to have to realize that you've stepped in or fallen into a comfort zone, and that it's only through an effort, making an effort, that you'll be able to get out of that. Now, it's kind of with this in mind that I want to tease something for my video that's coming out next week. Something is happening in next week's video that is a change for the channel, that is something that will allow me to be potentially more ambitious with the types of videos I make. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to be changing what I talk about or what I do, but this might allow me to change how I do it or even where I make some of my videos. So, well, you'll find out next week what that is. But at any rate, those are the 6 bubbles that you can find yourself in as a foreigner or a gaijin in Japan. Let us know in the comments your experiences with these and any advice you might have for avoiding them or getting out of them, or you found the perfect bubble and you're incredibly happy with it and you just want to explain what that is. That would be very interesting too. But at any rate, I want to thank you very much for watching this video. If you want to support the channel, the best way is to hit the like button, share this content with someone you think it would be interesting for. If you are all the way in this video and you like the content but you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Go ahead and subscribe, please. And if you want to support me directly, I do have a Patreon, which I will link below, and you can also become a channel member here on YouTube. I have an Instagram account, follow me over there. It's the same name as this channel, Xchapter, so go over there and follow Xchapter on Instagram. But at the end of the day, what's most important is that I'm deeply grateful for everyone who watches my videos. I'm grateful for the people who hit like and join the Patreon and comment below, especially the commenters. I appreciate you so very much. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace.